Hello, everyone. I'm Chandna Singh Nirwan, and I welcome you all to the Stories of the Indian Diaspora series curated under TMYS Review June 2021. I take immense pleasure and honor in introducing our esteemed panelists. Our first panelist for today is Ms. Damyanti Biswas. She's an Indian author currently based in Singapore. Her short fiction has been published or is forthcoming at Smokelong, Ambit Litro, Porto del Sol, Griffith Review Australia, as well as other journals in the USA and UK. Her work is available in various anthologies, and she serves as one of the editors of the Forge Literary Magazine. Her debut novel, You Beneath Your Skin, was published by Simon and Schuster and optioned for screen by Endemol Shine. Our second panelist is Ms. Ananya Mukherjee. She's a former business journalist, an international author, scriptwriter, trained dancer, theater actor, and a senior corporate leader in one of the world's largest multinational companies. Earth Satya was her first book, and her second book, An Unborn Desire, is due to hit the stands soon. She writes in English, Bengali, and Hindi, and lives in Singapore. Our third panelist is Dr. Sourav Banerjee. He is an associate professor of English at a government-aided college affiliated to the University of Calcutta. He has been teaching for 18 years. He is presently an Education Ambassador India of International Organization of Educators and Researchers Corporation Philippines. And Sir is also leading this project on the Indian diaspora, and I'm glad to share that I'm also a project assistant on the same. I welcome you all and now request Dr. Sourav Banerjee to kindly proceed with the session.
Yeah, good afternoon to everyone in India, and I guess it's good evening in Singapore, and a very good evening to my two guests also. So let me begin straight with the questions. Since this is an Indian diaspora project, and we want to talk to both of you about your migrating to Singapore, the when, the how, and the why part of it. So, if I begin with Ananya first, could you please tell us why you migrated, when you migrated, and how you migrated? And then I'll put the same question to Damyanti.
Sure. Thank you, first of all, for having me on this show. It's lovely to connect with so many of you through this platform, and I'm very, very grateful to tell me your story and for hosting this session. So to come back to your question, Sourav, I think it was way back in 2002, 2003. We were in India doing fairly well. I was working as a journalist in Deccan Chronicle, Hyderabad. My husband was working in Hyderabad with the Sports Authority of Andhra Pradesh. And one fine day, I think we just sat down and asked ourselves, is this what we want to do for the rest of our lives? And at that point in time, we took a decision that this is not what we wanted to do. We wanted to do something more. And frankly, I was only a party to that decision. It was my husband's decision. He wanted to do a PhD. So he's a doctor and he wanted to come here and do a PhD. I was a trailing spouse. It was a huge risk. And I will say I was a big part of that risk-taking decision when we said, okay, let's, come what may, let's go ahead with what we want to do in life and let's see where it takes us. And it was difficult because we were married, we had a child, and we didn't quite know where we were going. So that was in 2002, 2003, and then we came here finally in 2004. So that's how it happened as a trailing spouse. And I think I gave myself about 3 months' time to say, will I find a job? How am I going to support the family? So my husband was coming here on a student visa. I had no job. I just landed here as a tourist, a long-term tourist with my daughter. And we said, okay, let's give it a try. Let's see what happens. Que sera, sera. And I think life was slightly easier for first-time migrants to Singapore back then. I did land up with a job quite soon enough. It wasn't very easy. Finding a job wasn't easy. Finding giving up on all the luxuries of living in India with your maids and your huge house and all of that wasn't easy. We managed through difficult times. We managed through our shares of washing the dishes. And I know if we have, if we have audience and readers hearing this from other parts of the world, they will be amazed. They do it all their lives. But we, particularly in Asia, are so used to having house helps. So coming in here initially for those initial years where a car was a luxury or having a maid was a luxury, those things hit us because we were not students, so we were not backpackers. We had a established household, and then coming to a country where you don't know anything about the lifestyle, and it was too expensive. We had to struggle through those years, but I think everything has its merit. So you grow through your challenges, you learn through your challenges, you even challenge your own capabilities sometimes, and then you know that, oh, I can do this. I mean, I can survive this, and I'm a much stronger, better person today because of the kind of struggles that we've all been through. It's a very first generation migrant story, I would say.
Okay. So that's it. It's actually fortune favored the brave and the able, definitely.
I would think so.
Yeah. And Damayanti, what about your story? Would you care to share with us?
Thanks, Sourav. Thanks, TOIS. My story isn't as, how do you say, as filled with struggles as Ananya's. My husband was already based in Malaysia when we got married. So I got married and I came to Malaysia as his spouse. And but the thing that I have in common with Ananya, of course, is that I also didn't have a job. And I was like, what will I do? And what next? And so on. And I think that's when I got into writing the author's life. My husband said, well, you have a degree in English, and so maybe you start writing. And at that time the internet was coming alive, 2005. So at that time he said the world is flat. Thomas Friedman had come out with that book saying, you can be doing anything from anywhere via the internet. And that's how I started. I started writing articles. My husband got me an old laptop, and it did not have the letters I and Y. And I used to copy paste it from the internet. And that's how I wrote my first article. And I was very thrilled, and I sold it for the grand sum of $20. And I was like, oh, okay, I can do this. And I went on to be like a freelance writer. And I came in here right after like a single life in Delhi. So for me, it was more of establishing a household in Singapore. We kind of started from scratch, and we just went ad hoc from there. I first was in Malaysia for about 2 or 3 years. Then I came to Singapore, then went back to Malaysia, then back to Singapore. And the culture is quite similar between Malaysia and Singapore, so it wasn't a big adjustment. And of course, for me, it was more of I really enjoyed the fact that it was very safe for women, especially because I came from Delhi. I stayed in Delhi for 10 years before I came to Singapore, so that was a huge thing for me. Still now, I really appreciate that aspect of Singapore very much. That I could be walking the streets at 3 a.m. alone, and really nobody would bother me. So yeah, that's a little bit of my journey through Singapore.
Yeah, it's very interesting that you mentioned the I and the Y missing from your keyboard. I for I and Y for you. So you made it together, us. You had the you, I suppose. That clicked. Nice to hear it. All that. Okay, nice. I think Chandana has a couple of questions lined up.
Yes, my first question is to Damyanti ma'am. How has your own experience of migration and resettlement has shaped the various nuances in your writings? For example, if we look at your book, You Beneath Your Skin, Anjali is an Indian American. So, do you bring these references somewhere which are related closely or maybe not so closely to your own life?
Uh, The thing is, the distance gives perspective. I don't know whether I would have been a writer if I were in India. I mean, I never thought of myself as a writer. I sometimes still don't. I think of myself more as a reader. And it was, as I said earlier, more the circumstances that kind of led me into writing. And from non-fiction, I came into fiction. But when I did start writing my short fiction, it was mostly set locally. So I have like tons of stories that are set in Malaysia and Singapore. But when it came to the novel, somehow I found that for a novel you need to have a sort of depth of familiarity, which I did not have in the countries that I'm living in. I mean, of course, I've stayed here for like almost now 15 or 16 years, but I still don't feel that I know as much of the issues that kind of are affecting the locals, or exactly how the locals live, because probably I still live a little differently. So that's how my novel became a whole lot about India, and also New Delhi, because I'd spent, as you know, some time in New Delhi. And I started writing this book in 2011, and then end of 2012 we had the nuclear tragedy, and that kind of entered the novel. And I think this distance that I had from, if I was living in Delhi, probably I wouldn't have been able to see Delhi the way I have seen it or portrayed it in the novel. The distance I have now kind of gave me that perspective. And that's why I also chose Anjali, who is Indian American. So she has some association with India, but she was born in the States. So the gaze that she has is very much external. So I wanted to examine India with my familiarity, but a gaze that is, slightly more impartial, slightly less involved, slightly less subjective as much as possible. So yeah.
Okay, thank you, ma'am. To Ananya, ma'am, I would like to ask that you have several years of experience in the Indian print and television media. And today you are spearheading internal communications in one of the largest MNCs in Singapore. So, what differences or similarities do you see in the media work culture in both countries?
Uh, we can't hear you, Ananya.
Am I muted? Am I?
Yeah, now it's okay.
So I just make a small correction before we start. So I actually manage the whole gamut of communication now, corporate communication. So it's no longer internal communications. But yes, I'll come back to the question, which is having spent a considerable time in Indian media and then moved to Singapore with my first job was in the media. So I started my career or restarted my career in Singapore as a business journalist. And I did that for 8 long years. So that was quite some time. And in the last 18 years, I've been a corporate for the last 10 years. So the environment is very different. But then when I say that it is different, it's also in reference to the environment I left back in India, which was the early 2000s or the mid 2000s. So first of all, in Singapore, it's media it's a very small country, and if I can say, it isn't so much about sensationalizing news. Also, it is lot about finance and banking and numbers, and it's a business hub. So the kind of interest that people have is around numbers and business and growth, and not so much about politics or even lifestyle or scoop. So that's the kind of audience that there is. So people spend a lot of time reading meaningful stuff that will mean something to them at the end of the year. They want to know what the budget is. They don't want to spend time knowing which actor is seeing who, and that kind of news doesn't quite sell. So the audience is very different. And having said that, I used to manage a lifestyle page before I left India. And I think you can't get more close to the glamorous part of Indian media than that if you're in print media, which is to manage a lifestyle page or feature page. And then when I moved in here, I was left with little choice because numbers used scare me till date. So I couldn't obviously think myself as a business journalist crunching numbers or working for a Bloomberg looking at the stock market every evening. So what did I do? What could I do was the question. So I did choose human resource that was closest to what energized me or motivated me about journalism. And I picked that up. I worked with a magazine called HR in Singapore for many, many years. I was their editor. And when I was working there, I did realize that there are lots of myths. There are lots of there's a lot of notion in the market saying that Singapore media is very controlled. It is not so. It is the kind of news that people like to read or the kind of substance that gets consumed in this market. So before the advent of social media, honestly, nobody was interested in reading about anything but growth and development and what's in it for me. So I think that's the kind of that there's a huge difference in the audience, and therefore the content that you see created by the media here is very different. And if I'm allowed to say this without annoying too many people, I think Singapore media is still way more honest than the way we see the Indian media degenerating in today's times. That's the difference. Does that answer your question? Or are you also asking how does my experience in media now actually transfer to working in a corporate? Is that a part of your question as well, Chandna?
Yes, ma'am. Actually, ma'am, we would like to hear that too, considering
Right.
yours is such an inspirational story.
Thank you. So I think as a corporate today, and like I said, I don't just manage internal communications, but the whole gamut of corporate communications. I am obviously faced with a lot of media questions, right? I mean, I do company statements, I do media statements for the company, and there are allegations. 9 times out of 10, there are negative reports bothering me more than positive media outreach. And I think the one advantage of being on the other side of the table is you are actually wearing the journalist hat. So you're better prepared. You know what will interest people. You know what kind of stories people like to hear. You know what kind of statement will go as something extremely superficial and actually means nothing. So I'm able to coach and counsel my team much better to tell them, hey, this all sounds great. This is good literature, but it will mean nothing. Tomorrow people will just look at it and say, somebody in the corporate office just sat and wrote some great language. So I'm able to coach them to be more human. And I think that's the huge advantage of being from the other side. And also not to take everything too seriously. Sometimes when there is a negative report, a lot of our leaders get extremely bogged and worried, oh my God, my reputation is at stake. Media memory is very short-lived. And in the newsroom, we typically say what makes the headlines today will go into the trash bin tomorrow. So don't take it so seriously. It's not going to last ever. Neither your glory nor your grief will remain the headline forever. So that too, I think, has helped me as a leader understand and deal with crisis management day in and day out, not to take it too seriously.
All right. Thank you,
Okay, so
ma'am.
Chandana has asked both of you about your careers and works. But I'll move on to a different aspect now. So I'll ask Damyanti first. Recently, you have been seen mentioning that you have Googled the correct pronunciation of your name. So do we construct it as a search for roots? And please tell us about your roots in India, your maternal side, your paternal side. How often do you visit India? What are your feelings for this country, and so on and so forth?
You've been stalking my Facebook, I see, Sourav.
But
But
but we are
yeah,
also friends, and we have a research team. We have a research team, and we are Facebook
it's
friends
good.
too.
research. And yes, for me, I don't know why I've been so obsessed with kind of trying to figure out what the pronunciation for my name must be. Probably because in the past few weeks, I've met a lot of people outside of South Asia, outside of Southeast Asia online, and for my work. And they have asked me, okay, we are going to announce, somebody's going to read your story. So we need to pronounce your name. And can you please tell us how to do it? And I have kind of recorded it and sent it. And they have sent me recordings back. And it's taken quite a while. And even though I'm a student English honors, but I'm not a linguist, so that's why I wanted to give them the correct phonetic spelling, because some of them are very obsessive about getting it right, and which I appreciate. As to how much it relates to my roots, I don't know if I feel very cut off from my roots, because I visit India 2 to 3 times a year. Not the last year, obviously, but usually I do. I have been for the last 16 years, I've been outside of India. I haven't really felt as cut off, because probably because now we have more of social media. So now we know what's going on, what's cooking in everyone's kitchen, and people's political views, and what's happening in Bollywood. I know that it's not the same thing as being in India, but somehow I haven't really felt that disconnect. Also, Singapore has a huge Indian population, and now, of course, there's a lot of North Indian food. There's a lot of food from Bengal, where I come from. So, if I do miss Indian food, I don't really have to miss it. I can go and get it outside and cook as well as I can. I'm not a great cook. And as to nostalgia, I don't know if I feel nostalgic, because it's not something that I miss, because India is very much present in who I am, what I write. It's a very big part of my psyche. I don't feel alienated in any way, in the sense that probably because the distance from India is not so big, like it's just 4.5 hours. So I always keep telling myself, if there's any issues in India that I need to attend to immediately, I get to know about it in the morning. And if I do things right, I can be there by evening, which is what I think kind of gutted me during COVID, is that if things go wrong in India now, there's no way for me to reach there. So I think I have missed India a lot more in the past year, when the doors of India have been literally closed to me. That's when I missed it more, rather than the 15 years preceding, since 2004-5. I haven't missed India as much, because I've kind of never felt that I have left, which of course is an illusion. I know I have left. I know I live outside of India, and I know that I do not know India as well as I would have if I were, still living there. But somehow that disconnect, to me at least, it doesn't feel like it's been a disconnect other than 2020. I really hope things change in 2021. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. And to Ananya, even at the risk of again being called stalking for doing a poor man's job of doing research for the interview, you have written, Ananya, মাছের মাথা দিয়ে ভাজা মুগের ডাল, আলু পেঁয়াজ পোস্ত and আলু ফুলকপি দিয়ে রুই মাছের ঝোল, কানে ইয়ারফোন, মাথায় স্ট্র্যাটেজি, মুখে কর্পোরেট ন্যারেটিভ, আর হাতে খুন্তি, এই না হলে বাঙালি গিন্নি. So it is the quintessential Bengali wife, housewife, the mistress of the house, doing her household chores and managing office. So how do you think this food habit that you have is assimilated into the Singaporean culture, or do you find there's a dichotomy there? How have you been able to preserve your food culture in Singapore?
I think food culture is preserved at home. So it lies with the lady of the house on what she wants to cook. I think we are privileged in Singapore that we get all the masalas and the spices that are needed to cook an Indian meal. I can't say all my friends living in the US, or of course in the US, anybody picks up the phone on a wrong number also speaks Hindi these days. But having said that, not all spices are available across the world. We are blessed because of the proximity to India. And a lot of our Bangladeshi traders here bring in a lot of Indian Bengali spices that I had not even seen in India. And as I was telling you, I've grown up in 15 states in India. I've never seen motor dal or panch phoron in many parts of India by living in India. And these are very readily available off the shelf, and you can pick it up and cook them at home. So the onus, I think, of carrying that food habit lies on the lady of the house who manages the kitchen or trains her house help to develop that skill. Also, I was always very, I would say, pushy about making sure that my child learns to eat Bengali food and appreciate it. And I should say it started with actually getting my husband inducted into the Bengali cuisine first. He is a Bengali, but he's originally from Banaras, grown up again in 19 states in India, having finally settled in Bhilai. He's done his medicine from Raipur. So his food habits were also a mix of North Indian and Bengali food, not so much of macher matha diye muger dal he had never had before we got married. But it's been 24 years, and I think people learn to appreciate and they acquire that taste. And if it tastes good, people know that, they like it. They start appreciating it. And having said that, not all spices are available as well. So you kind of devise, like the posto that I have just written about. In Singapore, posto is banned. Poppy seeds are banned. So how do you make posto? And my husband is Ghoti, and most Bengalis will know this, Ghoti and Bangal. The Ghotis have to have posto. So he has missed posto for too many years while we lived here. And then I devised an alternative. And what I do is I grind sunflower seeds, which end up being a fabulous replacement, a substitute for posto, and tastes equally good. And you can't make it if you eat it. So you come up with those innovative, creative ideas to kind of devise a plan around keeping your Bengali heritage intact on your dining table. And when the Indian-born Singaporean child living in London comes back home and says, first thing I want to have is mushuri dal and aloo posto, I think your day is made.
Correct. So, food habits, inculcating your culture, living your culture every day through food habits. Yeah, Chandana, you have a question?
Yes, sir. My next question is to Damyanti ma'am. Ma'am, your project Y is concerned with the underprivileged children in Delhi. So, ma'am, I wanted to know that since your contribution to these social issues is so remarkable, despite that you're staying in Singapore, so what inspires you to contribute in such magnanimity towards your homeland?
It's neither remarkable nor magnanimous. It's the most natural thing in the world, I think, because once you come away from a place and you are put in a position where you have the means to help, you do help. So for me, I think it came about because before coming to Malaysia, I was in the fashion industry. So I'm a trained fashion designer. I used to work in export houses. I was an export house manager. And the very, underprivileged communities where I used to go and get embroidery done or stitching work done, and I used to see the disparity. So in those days, at least, a tailor would probably make, a highly paid tailor would probably make 300 rupees a day. And then when the dress went to to Italy, to US, to the UK, that would sell for hundreds of thousands of dollars. So there was this huge disparity, but I was a cog in the wheel, and I didn't have as much power, and more than power, I think I did not have as much awareness because I was part of the system. I could not see the system from outside because I was very much inside it. And I myself was struggling. So, when you are struggling yourself, you go into survival mode and you are not doing as much to see if someone else is struggling try and reach out. But once I came to Singapore, to Malaysia, what happened really, how I came in touch with Project Y was very simple. In the Straits Times, there was this article about Anuradha Bakshi. She had won this Citizen One award and for spearheading Project Y, which was established in 2000. I came to know about them in about 2009, I think. And then I told her, can I send you $10 a month? That's all I can afford right now, because writers don't earn as much. And so I said, that's all I can do. Can I do that? And it was, I think, her generosity, her kindness, and her reaching out to me, making me feel welcome, that when I went and I visited Project Y is an amazing, amazing place, because they reach out to very few children, only about 1,200, but they do it in such a holistic way, because they go inside the communities, and the teachers are, they used to clean utensils. They have become teachers. The food is prepared within the organization, and then there's nobody takes a car or anything, so they have an auto driver, so an auto rickshaw kind of transports the food. I have traveled in that auto. Everybody travels in that auto, and that auto driver is part of that place. And his children also study at Project Y. So Project Y kind of became that welcoming space for me, and embraced me so well that the credit entirely goes to them, that I got involved. I mean, I'm just just like anybody else, trying to reach out, but to find that avenue where you see that yes, whatever fundraising that you do, it actually goes to the right people. And what I really loved about Project Y is that you give them 100 Sing dollars or 100 US dollars, 99 would go to the people, because the overheads are what? The teachers, and the teachers are from the community, so it's not as if somebody from outside is coming in. So I really love this entire setup, and I have been in touch with them for I don't know, that many years, since 2009. And the credit goes entirely to them. I think everybody should go and see the kind of work that organizations like Project Y do. There are not a few non-profits. There are lots of non-profits in India, and the non-profit sector, a lot of very good work is being done. And I think if everybody kind of chips in just a bit, we can all make a huge difference. So yeah, to me, the shout out goes to Project Y. No credit due to me.
Thank you, ma'am. I have one question for Ananya ma'am also. Ma'am, you have more than 1,000 publications to your credit. So has your diverse experience of traveling extensively within India and abroad shaped your writings in some ways?
Oh yes, for sure. I think it has opened my mind as a traveler, because every time I travel to a new place, I'm constantly in this absorption mode. So I'm an audience. I take a step back and I just watch and observe and hear. And that listening has made a huge impact on the kind of person that I am today. So I think I'm more accepting of different kinds of people, of different cultures, and I have been exposed to different cultures. So that has definitely influenced my writing. And I take great pride in sometimes bringing those cultures to the rest of the world. So in my first book, there were stories that were not necessarily based in Singapore. Most of the stories were actually based either in India or outside of India in other countries. With the new one, I have actually deliberately made an attempt to ensure that, like I said, I have visited about 47 countries. I wanted to bring some of those cultural nuances, some of those cultural learnings that I had while I was visiting these places, things that you will not find on the internet. So if you want to know what Morocco is like, you will only get some limited information on the internet. And unless you actually are there, you experience the culture yourself, you wouldn't know certain things. And I had the privilege of being in those places in remote parts of Africa where nobody usually goes. People usually go on a safari and they take pictures and come back. But having spent time in Africa, having worked in remote Africa, those are the experiences that I try to bring through my writing, because some of them can be huge eye openers. They can also be leave you with some introspection, because sometimes when you, like Damyanti just said, unless you are there and unless you see that disparity and how privileged we are, we sometimes forget. We take things for granted. We think we are entitled because, we come from a different part of the world. And then when you actually go into a village where there is no water, no power, and no electricity, no water, they don't have no education, no health facilities, and people are still smiling. And then you look at yourself and question yourself in the mirror. Was I just cribbing because my mineral water tasted different from the last bottle that I had on the flight? Those kind of questions. Then you ask yourself, like, really, is that really worth, all my anger or frustration? What does it really mean? And I try to bring some of those learnings as I grow as a human. I try to bring some of those learnings through my writing. And I must say that I have received amazing feedback from most of my readers saying, this made me think. I sat and read your piece of work and it made me think. And I told my child to read it, or I told my husband to read it, because they were cribbing about something, that is actually absolutely meaningless when you read things like this. So yes, to answer your question.
All right. Thank you, ma'am.
Yeah, and I'll put a final question to whoever takes it. My question is, how strong is the Indian community in Singapore? And I can find out from talking to both of you that you have a very strong connection to India. But you are both first generation settlers migrants to Singapore, rather, I should say. So what about the next generation, people who are born there of Indian parents? What is their connection to India like? And if I may add to it, does anyone settled in Singapore of Indian origin ever want to come back to India post-retirement or anything of that sort? So any one of you can take that.
I think I'll go first.
Okay.
Yeah, I'll go first, and of course, Damyanti can chip in, and probably she will have similar views. I think as first generation immigrants, we try very hard to hold on to our culture and our heritage and our country's values. For our next generation or the second generation Singaporean Indians who are, say, our age or something, they have grown up in a completely different country, and I don't think they feel that connect. They love India when they are visiting. I don't think they will ever want to go back and settle because this is home for them. I can speak on behalf of my daughter. So she was born in India. She's 21 today. She has spent all her growing up years in Singapore. She was 5 years old when she came here. So home for her is Singapore. She loves Indian food. She speaks Bangla at home. She speaks Hindi. She can read, write Hindi. She can joke in Bangla. She wants, she will say dugga dugga when you leave home. But if you ask her, where is home? So she will say it is Singapore. And I think the next generation is also far more global than we were. So they're not limited by space. She lives in London today. And if I ask her, frankly, I don't think she will even want to come back and settle in Singapore, because she's living in London and that's where her comfort zone is. That's where her friends are. That's where she has built her own world and her own identity. And tomorrow she might want to go somewhere else and find her roots there. So I think they are not quite bound by a geographical space in their minds. They're far more global. Yes, they feel Indian. They will call themselves Singaporean Indians, but this is where home is for them. I think it is the first generation migrant parent who's caught between these two worlds of where do I belong and where do I want to live, and how do I identify myself. I think that's where we are the sandwiched generation. We belong here, we belong there. We don't want to belong to not belong to anyone.
Yes.
So we are the ones. They are quite clear in their minds. They know where they belong.
Okay. Okay. Thank you. Damyanti, you want to take that? Damyanti, we cannot hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah. It's clear now.
So I'm not a parent, so I can't speak to the next generation. I see the children of my friends, and they do seem like Ananya's daughter, and they are they love India, but they call themselves Singaporean, and they are global citizens. And in some ways, I also feel the same way, in the sense that I'm connected to India, but I'm happy to settle almost anywhere. Probably not Singapore, because I don't really bond with Singapore as much. But if you ask me, would you be okay to live anywhere else? I would be happy to live anywhere else, in the sense that, because for me, I feel that I can always go back to India. India is always there for me. So if I'm going to a new place, I'm happy to experience that as well. That said, we'll probably retire in India because, in the end, it's familiarity, comfort, and, the family ties, all of that is there. But for me, I am pretty okay. If you ask me tomorrow, do you want to go stay in another country? I'll be like, yeah, I mean, sure, why not? Because I don't feel as, like limited by the fact that I'm Indian and I should be living in India. I can be living in India. I have nothing against living in India. I think you can have a good life anywhere. It depends upon your perspective and your attitude towards what you have and what you make of
it. Okay. Thank you for pouring your hearts out. Chandna, if you have any questions, you may take one or two quick ones, or if there's none, we can just wind up.
Actually, there is one question, but I'm not too sure if the panelists would be willing to answer, so you can take your call. My question is on racial injustice. So in the present scenario of a global pandemic, racial injustice is a burning issue. So have you ever felt or witnessed any racial discrimination in Singapore or anywhere abroad?
I haven't experienced it directly, but I know people who have, and I know Singaporean Indians who live in Singapore who have been living here for many generations as against me. But personally, I have not experienced anything of the sort. But that said, on my Facebook, on my TL, I would see people speaking about it, and the Singapore government is very much aware of it because it's a very small country. It's a melting pot, and to maintain stability, they make a lot of effort to maintain racial harmony. But of course, there are issues. I'm aware of them. I have not personally faced anything myself.
I will go with Damyanti. It's the same here. I have heard of people facing racial discrimination in Singapore as they face it anywhere else in the world. We probably face less here, and then I've seen people complaining about it in, say, the US or the UK or in Australia. They feel insecure because of racial discrimination. I would say there are those one-off cases, but like Damyanti had said before, you can still walk in the middle of the street in the middle of the night at 3 a.m. with all your jewelry and feel completely safe, no matter which country of originality you come from or which ethnicity you come from. So, and you can continue to look Indian without the fear that, oh my God, if I look Indian and if I don't look like I'm one of the locals, I would be under some kind of a security threat. So I think that by those standards, Singapore rates very, very high in the order of maintaining racial harmony. And the government cracks down very, very seriously on. I mean, you can actually lodge a complaint against racial discrimination, even in school, even in kindergarten, and actions are taken against it. I'm a Singaporean Indian. I'm a citizen of this country. And I wouldn't have done that if I didn't feel I'm part of the society pretty much as my Malay neighbor or my British neighbor or my Chinese neighbor. So it is definitely the safest place for anyone.
Okay. Thank you, ma'am.
So, Chandana, we think we can wind up today's conversation.
Yes. I would like to thank all the panelists for sharing their experiences and taking out time for this wonderful session. Thank you again.
Thank you so much for having us.
Thank you
Thank
for
you. Thank you all.
really appreciate it. Thanks, Sourav. Thanks, Chandna. Thank you, TYS. And thank you, Ananya. We have to talk.
Thank you, Damyanti. We will connect offline. Thank you. Thanks, everyone.